Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the EIT Raw Materials Baltic Sea Stakeholder Day. My name is Olli Salmi. I'm the director of the Innovation Hub of the Baltic Sea CLC here in Espoo, Finland. I am very thrilled that we can have this event here today after so many months of not being able to meet face to face, to plan for projects and to deliver good outcomes together. I'm also happy that we can be here at the Geological Survey of Finland, fine premises, with an audience. We're also broadcasting this over the internet, so we're doing a hybrid event here today. We have about 170 registered participants for the event here today. The COVID is here, of course. We are very well aware that it's not gone away, and we are making precautions here on site that we are all safe. So please wear a mask when you're not speaking or eating. And also I think that there are some ambulatory sanitizers going around here. So just to make you safe. About the theme of the today and the topics today, we are going back to the roots of EIT Raw Materials. We are looking at the critical and strategic materials that go into some of the most important and significant value chains in Europe right now and in the future. We are looking at energy storage, we are looking at mobility, and we're looking at clean technologies. With me on stage here, I have Mia Smeds, who will be our moderator today. And I will leave you to her capable care for this morning and for the event. So once again, very much welcome to the event. Looking forward to fruitful discussions and enjoy the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Olli. I am also very thrilled to be here and to see so many enthusiastic people in the audience here on spot in Espoo at the GDK. I will do my best to keep our time schedule, but it will be difficult because we have a lot of really interesting presentations and discussions ahead of us for the coming 2.5 hours. You who are following this behind your own computer, please write comments and questions down below. You who are here in the audience together with us, please raise your hand and we will give you the microphone so your voice will be heard clearly also here and over the stream. And please put your phones on mute now. I will now give the word to Kimo Tilikainen, Director General for the Geological Survey of Finland. Welcome.
Thank you, Mia. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Chairman of the Board, Emmo Meijer. Nice to see you here in Espoo. CEO Björn Schäfer, nice to see you also here. I'm very glad that we can meet part of you in person, and I'm very glad that so many of you have joined us online. So I'm new General Director of GTK, Geological Survey of Finland. I have been working on this position 4 months, and I need to introduce a little bit myself. I have spent most of my youth, that means last 20 years, in politics. I have been member of Finnish Parliament 16 years, and then several times Minister for Energy or Environment or Agriculture, different portfolios. But now I have started to work in GTK, and I have noticed that the same problems that I have been involved in politics at the Finnish level, and European level, and globally are ahead of us still. So it's good to start to solve this kind of things like we are talking today, critical and strategic materials for energy and mobility conversion. I'm very thrilled to face these challenges again. So I think that in my short opening words, I need to tell you some good news and bad news and again good news. The good news is that we are little by little starting to recover from the COVID crisis. I'm glad to see so many of you here in person, and our economy also starting to recover from the depression caused by the pandemic. But the bad news is that the same old worldwide problems are still ahead of us. During the COVID crisis, climate crisis hasn't disappeared. We are still facing lack of resources in the world, and we are still meeting the problem of biodiversity loss in the world. So I think that, for example, in GTK, we try to do our best to solve these big global problems, and I'm very sure that all of you who has gathered here together, we are trying to do the same. And electrification is very hot word in the world. We think that electrification can solve problems in mobility, in transport and traffic, conversion from combustion engines to electric vehicles. That's one climate solution. At the same way, we think that electrifying industrial processes will help to get rid of CO2 emissions. And a similar kind of thinking goes throughout society. But what does it mean to electrify energy production or move the energy production out of fossil fuels to renewables and other CO2-free sources? I think that the main thing is that we need a lot of materials. I'm a great fan of circular economy, but I need to say that it's possible to circulate only something that is available. And most of the materials we need in conversion to clean energy and clean mobility, they are not yet in use. So they are somewhere underground. And no matter how big efforts we do to circulate materials in our industrial system or society at the moment, we will need new materials as well. Of course, we need to think also the resources we have once taken. So old mining sites and tailing bonds must be studied carefully. Can we develop new processes to make use of those materials once already processed? But in any case, we have to study carefully what kind of material resources we have, for example, in Europe. Nordic Innovation gave a task for Nordic Geological Service and other organizations to study what we can find in Scandinavia. And the good news is that all those materials needed to make this conversion we are talking about, they are available. But we need a lot of more information to find the right places and to make the change profitable. So this is the good news. We have an opportunity to meet the resource needs in Europe from Europe. And I think it's very wise when we are thinking the future that we will have European production, European research, and European solutions. We can't rely on just other corners of the world. We must do many, many things ourselves. So this is my opening, and I wish very fruitful discussions today, and I'm very glad to have this opportunity to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kimo Tilikainen. And I'll be very brief and immediately give the word to Emmo Meijer, who is chairperson of the executive board of EIT Raw Materials. Welcome.
Thank you. So I'm an independent chairperson, so to say, coming not from the raw materials sector. Good morning, everybody. I'm from the chemical sector, and I worked a long time for the food sector. Being in Positions like Chief Technology Officer and R&D leader for big multinationals like the DSM Group and Unilever. So for me, the raw materials sector and also this partner meeting is a completely new experience. And I'm pretty sure that being here in full interaction with you, it will create a lot of added value. And I believe connecting with you creates new insights, valuable insights, and also your feedback is really appreciated in order to improve our role as an important European network for the sector. Let me say a few words about the EIT Raw Materials. It's now 5 years old, about 5 years old, so the ramp-up phase is clearly behind us. And we put recently a revised strategy in place, and probably you know that, leading us to a sustainable future for the KIC after the subsidy period. This will continue, but we already passed the high point of our subsidy, so it will decrease in due time, and we still have to work then on a sustainable future for our EIT. And for me, that means that EIT should not be seen only as a subsidy provider, but it has also to create added value for you with a full service model, and that is really our ambitions for the year to come. And to do this, our EIT is also spreading its wings, and I think we had a very successful year despite the corona crisis. We were entrusted with the so-called IRMA initiative, and Bernd will talk more about that, fully supported by the European Commission. So, and there are more things to tell about that recent announcement, but I leave it to Bernd to tell more about that. And what is important, that this is putting us really on the map of the European Union as a crucial network for their sustainability agenda and initiatives, but also for the sustainability of the raw materials sector. And you know about the Green Deal. So our role as raw materials sector is fully recognized now by the European Commission, and that raw materials play a crucial role for a sustainable future. And that's beneficial to you as partners, as stakeholders, that we are that clearly on the map now of the European Union. So I'm extremely happy with these positive developments, and I think, not coming from the sector, but I'm getting passionate about the sector. Now I'm in this role already for a couple of years. And I think the raw materials sector really deserves a prominent place on the European agenda to the benefit of all its stakeholders. I wish you a really enjoyable day with many interactions. We are available. We have André Klasek here. He is on the managing board. We have Bernd here. He's our CEO. And of course, I'm here. So any question you have can be addressed by us, hopefully, I think. Okay, thank you very much. So now I give the floor to Bernd, our CEO.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm happy to welcome you here and having the chance to be part of this opening speech. Thank you, dear Emo and dear Kimo, for your introduction. And I think we have a very exciting topic here and today. I mean, just reading the title is energizing. Critical and strategic materials for energy and mobility. And I think these are the real thriving topics. And when we are looking into this, and we are looking also into the region, I think it's without any discussion that Finland and Sweden are amongst the most important sources of critical and strategic raw materials in Europe. And the countries have already adopted actions that will secure the supply to clean tech and green tech industries for the years to come. Finland is on its way to becoming the only country in the world with a complete value chain in batteries, from mine to battery, and again recycling used batteries at the end of their lives. That's remarkable. In addition, Finland, Sweden and Estonia are on their way to becoming a regional hub for rare earth elements and magnets. Estonia hosts one of the few rare earth processing plants in Europe. Finland and Sweden have deposits as well as industrial side streams and waste heaps that enable extraction of rare earth elements. And also a magnet production plant that will be able to use those elements. It is extremely important in the Nordic and Baltic efforts in the raw materials sector that those are in line with the major European policy actions, such as the Green Deal and the Fit for 55 package, the 2020 communication on critical raw materials, and the ERMA, the European Raw Materials Alliance, with its Clean Tech Task Force, where I will refer to later on. The EIT Raw Materials is in full speed to support the growth of the industry, startups and talent around critical and strategic raw materials in the Nordics and Baltics, with our biannual CAVA calls as well as our support services within ERMA and directly with partners. We are better geared than ever to significantly strengthen the raw materials sector in Europe. In the past CAVA 8 call, the Baltic Sea CLC partners were successful in getting new projects with over 40% hit rate. Again, a remarkable result. In the EIT Raw Materials portfolio, we have 96, so close to 100 startups from the Nordics and Baltics, having raised close to 20 million euros investments between 2016 and 2020. Again, a remarkable result for the region. Among the upscaling portfolio, we have 35 new products or services launched on the market in the different raw materials value chains. In the ERMA pipeline, so the pipeline of the European Raw Materials Alliance, there are 26 investments on the batteries and rare earth value chains, about half of those coming from the Nordics and Baltics region. Finally, each year, the EIT Raw Material trains several thousand experts and new talents into the raw materials sector to get the right booster for our industry. So I would really like to welcome you all to enter this train towards a more sustainable future of Europe by getting together with your customers, suppliers and research collaborators, utilizing especially the EIT Raw Materials matchmaking and networking events such as this Stakeholder Day, and get your innovation, education or investment project off the ground. I'm also here today to talk a bit about two other news. So one is the Clean Tech Task Force with the European Commission. So I'm proud to highlight today that the European Raw Materials Alliance, which is led by EIT Raw Materials, will set up and run the so-called Clean Technology Task Force to foster investments in the critical raw materials value chain and in the EU and with its strategic partners. I think this delivers huge opportunities to our partners also in the Baltic and Nordic region. The task force will gather together with all relevant actors, including also the Commission, the European Investment Bank, the EBRD, so the European Bank for Research and Development, and together with the European Battery Alliance, which is a novum in our history, and together with the industrial actors, we will act together and contribute to building up the investment chains from exploration to post-closure for priority projects. Also, this is new, as so far the EIB was not getting so much engaged in the upstream, so in the exploration and mining activities. The task force will discuss, among other points, investment needs and opportunities in the critical raw materials value chain and area, as well as, very important, financing conditionalities. Together with the EIB, 6 to 8 projects will be submitted by the IRMA and the EBA, probably still within this year, by the end of this year. And I think that's a good result. So that's the first thing I wanted to add in addition to the introduction. The second one, give you also a brief update on where we stand with IRMA. I keep it very short. IRMA as also an investment platform. Since we have been launched, we managed to address and to propose almost 30 investment themes with a total invest volume of 11 billion euros. And this is making us pretty proud, but even more proud it makes us that today, and probably it's not a coincidence that it's today, we will be launching the first action plan, which is not only called an action plan, but which is a document that will provide really recommendations to politics, industries, and the network on what has to be done in our first cluster on rare earth elements and permanent magnets. So I'm excited to announce the release of the action plan developed by the European Raw Materials Alliance to secure access to rare earth elements for the European industry. The report entitled Rare Earth Magnets and Motors, a European Call for Action, will be sent to all of you this afternoon. So I'm happy to be here and wish for very good and fruitful discussions. And once you download and read the report, I wish you happy reading. Thank you very much and looking forward to a great event today. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernd. And that brings us one step forward to some more exciting discussions and presentations. I will introduce Piritta Salonen. Welcome to the stage. You're Head of Process Technology for Finnish Minerals Group, and you will talk more about sustainability in battery value chains.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be on stage to have a possibility to speak in this very important topic. Our company, Finnish Minerals Group, is fully state-owned special purpose company. We have ownerships in few companies like Terrafame, where we are the majority owner. Terrafame is nickel, cobalt, zinc and copper producer. At the moment producing nickel and cobalt sulfate for a battery value chain. The production started this year and is on ramp-up stage. We have also ownership in Keliber, which is a lithium project, not yet in production. The mine will be in Kaustinen and production plant in Kokkola. And the production will start in few years, so it's under development at the moment. And our newest ownership is Sockli, a mining project also. It's been developed for several years and has a possibility for phosphate production, and also we are looking for byproducts as typical rare earths, for example. And we have developed Finnish Battery Chemicals, which is project company that we are concentrating in cathode active material production and cell projects in the future. Our strategy is quite closely supporting this sustainable value chain formation in Finland. So we are looking for different mining possibilities because we have critical reserves in Finland, but we also want to be able to remove them or recover them in sustainable way. We have our mission is to create the value chain in Finland. And at the moment we have technology projects which are done together with research organizations to support this further future development. And also looking the business opportunities in battery value chain in general. We have noticed that there are trends which are leading this value chain development. And the challenges at the moment are we need to lower carbon footprint, also to ensure the ethical and traceable raw materials. and value chain general. Also, the waste management for end-use batteries are stated as very critical, and also waste management and emissions in the production steps. And we see that Finland has lots of opportunities to bring in with all these challenges, because we have very high technology knowledge and research in Finland, and we can have also in Nordics that we can support these actions. Carbon footprint is an emission. CO2 emissions are quite difficult to handle. Most of them are coming in the batteries from the raw materials, and especially cathode materials at the moment, considering these lithium-ion batteries. And one way is to ensure that the materials are mined and processed as low CO2 emissions as possible, but also to ensure that transportation from long distances can be minimized. And also, we should concentrate in process development that these processes would then consume less energy all the time. As you can see from the slide, there's done some studies about Terrafame nickel production compared to conventional processing. This bioleaching combined with recovery has much lower carbon emissions compared to traditional smelter processes, for example. And also we could look for processing these biomaterials for battery industry. One problem is that it's quite difficult to see these materials, where they are coming and how they are ending up to our cars or energy storages. And this is because all countries have, or areas have a little bit different standards compared, for example, in Europe, we are producing different standards compared outside Europe. And we are now, as a Finnish Minerals Group, pushing forward for this traceability, so that also end users would have the understanding where materials are ending up to the batteries and how they are produced. So that would also give the value for the users. They can select the best solution, and might also be the possibility to pay a little bit extra for the sustainable way produced materials. And I think the customer commitment and understanding is the key, but also the producers need to take into account that they are doing this traceability throughout their value chain. When seeing this circle of materials, concentrating here mainly cathode materials, but also anode materials, we are first having these minerals, as was mentioned, that we need to have new minerals all the time. But as this electricity for transportation and also energy storages are rising, we need to consider what to do with waste produced, to see the solutions for end use, reuse after they have had the first usage, for example, in electrical vehicle. They could be used for storage for some time, and also see then the possibility of combining recycle for this processing. If I have few words. So also we are concentrating in management of wastes, and these plants have raised a little bit different type of waste streams that previous plants, and for example, sodium sulfate management is seen as critical, and we are developing the combined research programs with piloting with research organizations. and also recycling inside plant, so reuse waters and chemicals if it's possible. So this is then seeing circular economy also in the one operation plant. Thank you. I could speak for hours about these topics, but I see Mia is looking for me now. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Piritta. And you will be back in a few minutes when we start to have the panel discussion about these topics. Energy and batteries, that's what we are focusing on right now, and how to storage and converse energy. Our next speaker is Egert Valmra, and you are program director at Skeleton, and you will talk about ultracaps. Welcome.
No clapping? All right, so let me start with an age-old trick of making presentations and ask you a question, one of those rhetorical types. When did you realize yourself that batteries are going to be a big thing in transportation? Have you answered it truthfully already? I think that I realized this back in 2009 when a friend of mine got to work for Tesla and did a rally drive in that Tesla Roadster. And I realized that if battery is able to do that kind of performance, I might be interested one day when the prices would come down. And maybe this one day has now come. Batteries are the big thing in transportation. And they are this big thing up to the point where we are talking about critical and strategic raw materials and sustainability. And what I am going to go into now is a technology which may be able to take the strain off a little bit from this value chain of raw materials, so that you would not have to go and pay for raw materials which cannot be fully traced, as was spoken before. All right, so where do I come from? Just south of here, Estonia was favorably mentioned 20 minutes ago. We have some interesting companies. I hope one of those is ours, Skeleton Technologies. We are around about 200 people. We were founded in 2009 to commercialize a couple of technology developments from the local university, or people working for the university at least. But we produce in Germany because the customers are in Germany, and quite possibly they might not be interested in buying the world's best ultracapacitors from a former Eastern Bloc country. So to do away with that risk, we produce in Germany. Right, ultracaps, what are they? Well, I'll give you a simple analogy. We're not going to go back to the physics class. It's just a simple analogy. Think about batteries as a marathon runner. They can use a lot of energy stored in their bodies through complex chemical reactions, and are most comfortable in releasing that energy in round about an hour or two or more. Ultracapacitors are like a sprinter that can give a very strong burst of power for 10 seconds, but then it's a little bit spent. So different types of technologies, one for longer charge and discharge times, the other one for 10 second, 20 second, and in the extreme 30 second range. And the difference is, simply speaking, that ultracapacitors do not use chemical reactions to store energy. They use static electricity. But I'm not going to go into that. You can check it out on Wikipedia. And as a company, we are active in 4 main areas. We have the automotive customers, the most important ones, of course, right? Then heavy transport, grid and renewables, and industrial equipment, which of course is a very wide area. And we have been doing rather well. Remember back in 2009, we were taking some interesting research results, putting those in practice. And our supercapacitors, ultracapacitors today are the most powerful ones in the world. And our largest competitor, Maxwell Technologies, was bought by Tesla back in 2019. And we outranked them by a ratio of 4-1, in power at least. And we are equal at energy density. Tesla somehow is not selling ultracapacitors. Elon Musk has a famous quote that the next big thing in batteries will not be batteries, it will be ultracapacitors. But, well, the technology upon which Maxwell Technologies was based upon has moved under a new brand and they are selling, etc. So Tesla is not really in this business. But anyway, if it was, we could say that we make better ultracapacitors than Tesla. So what makes ultracapacitors so nice? See, there's loads of reasons why to like them. They're 100 times more powerful than batteries. They have no hazardous chemicals in them. Well, there is some, but it's less than 1%. They last for 15 years. They can do 1 million cycles, etc. So lots of reasons why you could say ultracapacitors are better energy storage devices. Just a few teething problems. They hold 20 times less energy than batteries. And they are too bloody expensive still. And one of the reasons is that they don't have, they are not manufactured at a scale anywhere near similar to batteries. So thinking about the customers, they want better batteries. They want better energy storage. What is that? Okay, you need to meet their requirements for range and power, but you have to do it as a low price as possible. And batteries have been quite good at this ever since late 90s. You know, first the cost per kilowatt hour dropping due to electronics, then to take up in the automotive business, and the price is still dropping. Here's some estimations. What about ultracapacitors? They've been in the market also actually since 1999, but they are still really quite expensive. $4,500 per kilowatt hour. You want me to repeat that? Do you believe this one? 4,500. I mean, with batteries, we've been in hundreds for a long time now, and this is in thousands. And what we as Skeleton claim, the cost of energy storage in ultracapacitors is going to come down to levels comparable to lithium titanate oxide batteries, $450 per kilowatt hour. Sorry, I'm talking about it in dollars because, well, the larger market is in dollars, although we usually talk in euros, don't we? So what do you do with ultracapacitors today, those costing $4,500 per kilowatt hour? Well, they use it in trams. Skeleton ones are used in trams. And you can actually achieve 30% energy savings using ultracapacitors in trams. But the big trick is, you might be asking yourself that, you know, aren't trams connected to the electric grid? That, you know, if they recover energy from braking, they can give it back to the grid, right? Well, yes, if you have that infrastructure in place. What about if you are building new tram lines? You don't have that infrastructure. You need to make that investment. But if you have onboard storage, really powerful storage with 1 million charge-discharge cycles, you can forego the large investments into very powerful substations, etc. So you have profitability from day zero. We're out of time? Okay. Let me quickly come to what's next, right? So we can look at ultracapacitors in 3 generations. One is what we are producing now, what we could call a generation 1. And it has all the standard attributes of an ultracapacitor. And generation 2, which is in the C prototype phase now, and you can come and buy samples. Well, these retain all the characteristics, but they will be less than half the price and have double the energy density. The reason being that if you're using a better material inside, but on the other hand still have most of the costs on the level of assembling the cells and not the material itself, then doubling the energy density will halve the price. But now we are working also on a third generation, on the first round of industrial prototypes. And this technology trades away a lot of the power and a lot of the lifetime for more energy. And this is a technology which is comparable to lead-acid batteries with one difference. They're more than 100 times more powerful. So think about it. A lead-acid battery that you can charge in 15 seconds. Okay, in 15 seconds it would be at 70% efficiency. If you want 90% efficiency, make that 36 seconds. What could you do with that? And it's not a technology which will compete straight out with NMC batteries in vehicles or hydrogen fuel cells or the internal combustion engine. It still does not have the energy density to do that. But what it can do is support these technologies in providing the short-term power and thus reduce the need for battery size in electric vehicles, the use of overstrained batteries in hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and it can significantly impact the energy you would need from an internal combustion engine. And to finish off, I'll go back to this very nice slide, that there is a certain automaker with some Nordic flair, if I could say so, who has signed a letter of intent with us saying, guys, if you really put this into production, we think it's going to save 30% on our fuel expenditure. Yes, please. Where do we sign? And they have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Egert. You will also be back for the panel discussion that we will have in a few minutes. That was super interesting. Our third presenter is with us from his home and his own computer on the other side of the globe. His name is Darren Townsend, and he's a Chief Development Officer for Neo Metals. Are you there, Darren? Hi, welcome.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Hope you're well. I'm just going to bring up my presentation, if you can bear with me for a second. I don't think I have the authority to access the share function, guys.
Could you, Tuomas, help us out? We are getting some assistance here, Darren, so please bear with us. How are you doing this day?
Pretty good. It's a fairly warm afternoon in Perth in Western Australia, and it's getting up to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so on the homeward stretch.
Yeah, I can hear. Have you had enough coffee today?
No more coffees for the day. I think 2 or 3 hours away from having a beer with a bit of luck.
That sounds great. Now it looks like we have your presentation here showing on the screen, so please go ahead.
Lovely. Okay, let's do it that way. Well, thanks everybody for the opportunity to present today. And sorry, I can't be over there with you. Our government at the moment won't even allow us to leave the country, so that makes life pretty interesting. So here today to talk about decarbonising the critical raw material supply chain in the EU, and talking about particular focus where we're going to be making zero carbon vanadium, and with a look to put that into some specialist applications with some new lithium cathode chemistries where we're adding vanadium into those new chemistries. So if I can go to the next slide, please. Okay, just as an Australian Securities Exchange listed company, we have to show the disclaimer, but please skip to the next slide. Okay, so just talking about us as a listed company, we focus very much on generating projects in the renewable space. So we've sort of pivoted away from more traditional mining applications and are now moving towards ESG, circular economy type projects, and really with a lot of focus at the moment in the European Union. So we've got 3 projects at the moment in Europe, one which is a lithium battery recycling project that we're working on with German engineering company SMS Group. And we are separately looking at a vanadium recovery project. That's really going to be the focus of today's presentation. Next slide, please. All right, you can skip that one. That's just sort of talking about the main part. Okay, so we're going to go through this sort of typical overview of what the issue, the opportunity is, what our solution is, what our USP is, and then just give a bit of an overview on the revenue model for the business and also the status of the project. So next slide, please. So this is just showing that there is a shortfall of vanadium production inside the European Union. It's been on the critical metals list since 2017. So what we're looking to do is to develop a vanadium business inside the EU, and in particular taking steel slags from SS Orber in Sweden and Finland, and actually taking that and processing it in Finland, in Pori at Capacitors port, and helping basically address this shortfall of production inside the EU. Next slide, please. So this is just an overview of where we're sort of looking and what the opportunity is. We've got a deal where we're working with our partners, Critical Metals, of which we are a large shareholder in. We're jointly working together to develop this project. It's underpinned by 2 million tonne of supply arrangements with SS Orber, and we're going to be looking to produce, we'll feed about 200,000 tonne per annum of steel slags that are byproducts from SS Orber's production, and put that through our process. We've developed an innovative process where we're actually able to sequester carbon dioxide in the process, and as part of that, we're able to actually produce vanadium with a zero carbon footprint, which is obviously a very exciting opportunity. We are at the stage of having just completed the pre-feasibility study, and we're now moving into the bankable feasibility study for the project. But the pre-feasibility shows a lowest quartile operating cost position. And in more recent times, we've announced, our partners have announced with a deal with H2 Green Steel, which is a new development up in the northern parts of Sweden. So we're looking at scalability and replication of the business. Next slide, please. So this is where we're looking to put the facility. Doesn't get much better in terms of infrastructure. So very impressive with the help we've had from Business Finland and the Port of Capacitors, Port of Pori, and the local leadership in Business Pori. Very, very impressive. So in terms of infrastructure, it doesn't get much better for us. Railway lines, ports, existing infrastructure. So really, really good. And we've been able to, we're in the process of vitalising the arrangements with regards to 20 hectare place for the location, which is the yellow dashed line that you can see there. Next slide, please. So this is really the the guts of what we're doing. This is the high-level sort of overview of the flow sheet. So we take the SSAB steel slags, which have extremely high levels of vanadium in them, which make them particularly attractive to us. We take those, we recover them as a byproduct from SSAB, we put them through a mill, and then we go through multiple stages of leaching. We're using sodium carbonate there as the main reagent. And the reason we're able to sequester between sort of 65 and 100,000 tonnes per annum of CO2 is we actually use the CO2 to regenerate the reagent. So that's the way we sequester. This is an innovative process that we've developed. It has a patent granted inside the EU. And then what we do is we take that leached vanadium and we put that through a solvent extraction process, which is very standard hydrometallurgical process. And then we finish off with a standard back end for vanadium recovery, which is an AMV type process. So great thing about it, circular, we're not emitting any processed waters into the environment. We recycle and recover all the water, and all of our sort of co-products and byproducts have got other uses. So we've got sodium sulfate there that we'll have as a byproduct, and we've also got what we call stabilised slag material, which will be able to go into construction products, green cements, fillers, etc. So very exciting, really a key circular economy. And what we're really targeting, if we can go to the next slide, please, with the product is we're going to be making extremely high purity vanadium, greater than 99.5%, and that's perfectly aligned with going into some of the vanadium redox flow batteries that are being obviously a growing market inside the EU. Also, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, new cathode chemistries for lithium-ion batteries, which we're also going to be targeting those markets as well. So we think it's particularly, relevant to try and target those circular economy and new energy, green energy applications in that. So where we're at, we've basically pilot planted this already, and we've proven it. So we've run the pilot plant for 24 days at 25 kilograms per hour scale, and we've produced vanadium from it. That vanadium has been pouch tested by potential offtake partners for the new vanadium lithium cathode chemistries, and everything's sort of coming together very nicely. So looking forward to progressing the project. Next slide, please. Vanadium is a notoriously volatile commodity, so you really got to protect yourself by operating in the bottom quartile of the operating cost curve, and we're very happy to show that our pre-feasibility study has shown where we sit in that lowest quartile of operating costs. So making extremely high purity vanadium inside of the EU in the lowest quartile, targeting the battery markets is a pretty exciting place to be. Next slide, please. This just shows some of the high-level economics of and key outputs. So going to be initially producing about 13 million pounds per annum of high-purity V2O5. As I said before, zero carbon footprint. That's been independently modelled by an external group, and you can see some of the economics there. Next slide, please. That's just to show you the sort of scale of the pilot plant that we've completed. So very comfortable about the process and where it sits. We've got some innovative ideas and how that's all done, but we're using standard pieces of equipment. We're not operating at any sort of pressures. All of the temperatures are sub 100 degrees Celsius. So it's relatively simple from a materials and construction perspective. Next slide, please. So we've made really good progress from our initial deal with SS Orbert, looking to drop out the feasibility study middle of June next year, 2022, making a financial investment decision at the end of next year and looking to be in construction by the end of 2024. Next slide, please. So that's it pretty well. I mean, you know, we've got a great opportunity there. We're very happy to be working with Critical Metals, our partners, SS Orbea, our suppliers of the material. You know, we're a well-funded Australian listed company, market cap circa mid 400 million Australian dollars. So looking forward to continuing to progress the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darren. Please stay where you are, Darren. No beer yet, because we're going to have a short panel discussion regarding what you've just been presenting. A panel discussion about energy storage and conversion.
No problem.
Please, I say welcome to Ulla Lassi, your professor and head of the unit at University of Oulu. And your core competence is preparation of electrode minerals used in lithium-ion batteries. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Piritta, welcome back.
Thank you.
And then we have Katja with us as well. You're a super talented doctoral student at Aalto University. And Egert, thank you. We will now focus the coming 20 minutes on discussing energy storage. And I will try to focus this discussion on sustainability aspects and also the Green Deal and how we can use these new technologies that you've been presenting and that we've been talking about, and also enhance everything that's going on within the whole EU, but also the Nordics and the Baltic Sea. So my first question to you is, how do we ensure that the value chain from the mine to the batteries in the EVs are as sustainable as possible? And I'll give the word first to you, Ulla.
Thank you. So that is a very difficult question first. So, of course, we are now within the European Union increasing the traceability related to battery value chain, but still there are issues we cannot which are not in our hands, because we have also, for example, mining activities a lot outside the European Union area, and of course currently all the battery business is more or less located in Asian countries. So Europe is just coming on the market.
But what do you see are the next steps that we have to take here in the EU?
This traceability issue is very good. I fully support it. But I also see that we should also not only talk about the sustainability in the raw materials viewpoint. We have put quite a lot of effort on that. We have discussed about the ethical issues related to cobalt, but it's quite a limited issues. We are going towards cobalt-free batteries. I would more highlight, because we are now quite many battery lines under construction in Europe, battery lines are not green at all. There are several issues we should point out. We use toxic chemicals, we use fluoride-containing compounds. We also have some issues related to safety on that. So I would like to highlight also the sustainability, not only for the critical raw materials, but also for the whole battery cell line. That is not so much discussed.
I can see, Piritta, you're agreeing here. What's your take on this?
Yes, I think Ulla was raising very good points, that also processing is quite critical. And we had the opportunity to have these Finnish technologies, European technologies, and develop even further, and maybe to have bio-based materials included for the batteries. So there are opportunities to even take it further, but of course traceability is important, because otherwise the customer doesn't know how it's produced and if it's sustainable or not. And at the moment, as discussed, most of the materials come from Asia. And we don't know how they are produced. We have certain trends and that we know for these processing plants, but still it's not visible for everyone. And this is maybe something that we in Europe can support, so that we can take these new technologies and make it visible for customers.
So traceability and visibility for customers. But what can we actually do as concrete measures here? Except for that, what can we change?
We can study new materials, and for example, these electrolytes, which are very harmful. And of course, separators, we have the possibility to discover, for example, bio-based materials. Also another side, which I was not discussing so much. So there are lots of possibilities from that side also to increase the sustainable measures. But of course, the waste management, all this, it's a big field. So lots of opportunities. And I think it's a way of thinking that we should concentrate in thinking first, not saying that let's buy electric vehicle, then we save the nature, but to see also how it's produced.
Darren, what are your take on this? How do you see this value chain and the sustainability aspect?
Yeah, I think the way we're addressing it is really with the two key projects in Europe. So the lithium battery recycling. So we're just urban mining, if you like, not traditional mining. So that gets away from having to mine the original materials. We just recycle them from batteries. And then obviously, we're not mining traditionally with the vanadium recovery project. We're taking the byproduct from SSL there, so we don't have the mining risk and the mining related issues from that. So that's how we're addressing it.
I could see, Egert, that you also have something you would like to add.
Yeah, I think I may have a few questions which can be discussed later at dinner, but I wanted to take cobalt as a quick example. The reason for cobalt being in the cathode of a battery is about lending it more power density in order to get the heat out. Yes, the cobalt issue might be diminishing because there is less and less of it in the newer chemistries for batteries, and I don't know where the battery industry is going from here. What will be the generation 4 batteries, when we will actually get them? Those are the questions we can discuss at dinner, please. Yes. But what if you didn't need batteries to deliver that much power? And, well, yes, where we come in, yeah. That you can use an alternative technology that covers the powerful part and batteries as the main energy source in an electric vehicle.
I have always said, and I said it again, so lithium-ion batteries is only one option. And you should always select a battery based on the application. So, for example, there is nothing bad in the lead-acid batteries we use currently in the cars, because if you look at the European case, lead is always a byproduct of the metal refining. And we recycle lead very carefully. Let's say almost all the lead from the batteries inside the Europe is already recycled. So, and this kind of like Neometals presented this idea that they are not using like the minerals. They use a slag, which is already a byproduct from the other company. I think that this kind of innovations are needed, and these are much more sustainable than starting from the mining activities itself. But always keep in mind, for example, the capacitors you presented, they are very good solutions for some applications. And we have also cobalt-free chemistries already on the market, like a LFP. We don't need always a lithium-ion battery in the application. It's always dependent on the application itself.
But Ulla, you are also a professor at Oulu University. You are educating the future, the skills, the talents that we need in this region to be able to create all these new innovations. And Katja, you're one of them. You're one of the top talents that will take this further on. What are your take on this when you hear these discussions? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think everyone here has given quite good like thoughts on the discussion. One thing that I'm thinking that was kind of mentioned very slightly, but we should also try to enhance the recycling of the materials. That currently, yes, there are processes, but I think there are lots of things that could be improved in those. So that also, so that we can collect not only the valuable metals from the battery waste, but also the not so valuable metals such as lithium, for example, and then the electrolytes, for example. Yeah.
So circulating and recycling. What are your take on this, Piritta? You work a little bit with this.
Yes, I think it's very, very important point. But at the moment, of course, this industry area and usage of batteries, lithium-ion batteries, is just increasing. So materials are not yet available, at least not in Europe. So this is something that we need to be prepared when the materials come. And I think there are some challenges also there that we don't know because we have lots of different chemistries. And if it would make sense to separate them already when we are collecting the batteries and cells so that we are not mixing this LFP and NMC types so that we know what is in this recycle mass when it comes to operation. It makes the processing much easier, avoids excess wastes and all that kind of thing. So comes back to traceability. So if we can collect the waste a smart way and then have the processes, efficient processes, so that we minimize the waste. And then in the future, we can manage this need of batteries because now we are running out of raw materials because the demand is so huge. So we are going to need recycling to be able to serve this need.
Darren, you already work with recycling scrap from SSAB. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you've been working with these things?
Yeah, so the slag stockpiles from SSAB, we've basically developed the process ourselves. And so we've taken samples from the various stockpiles and put them through initially lab scale sort of test work, and now we've taken it up to pilot scale work. So that's on the vanadium recovery project side of it, with the lithium-ion battery recycling part of the business, working with SMS in Germany. We're now moving into that. We're basically partway or halfway through the demonstration plant. So we've actually scaled up now. We've moved on from pilot plants, and you've got to do the work in the lab and work yourself up. And you know the point about understanding the different cathode chemistries and the different battery chemistries, I think, is important, and that was a good point. I think too the comment about it'll take time for the build-up of materials to come back out of the car life, the 7-year sort of life of batteries in a car. We're still going to need to mine quite a bit of material between now and then, so it's not like anybody can be thinking they can stop mining straight away. It's going to be a key part of what we're doing for a long time, but as the recycling increases, it will reduce.
Thank you, Darren. Katja, you've been studying, and you have a lot of peers studying these issues as well. Where are the trends right now within your field? Is it towards circularity, or what do you see is the next steps?
Well, I think, of course, the research on circularity is increasing, I would say. I myself have been, lately also taking a few look at that. But I think at the same time, it's already, it's also very still heavily focused on finding new materials. For at least, I know positive electrodes the best. So in there, I would say that it's very much on the trying to just get higher and higher capacity and energy density a lot. At least that's what I think it is a lot about. But I would hope so that at least now then, of course, the recycling aspects would also come to then, and then also maybe the kind of could we increase the sustainability of the materials by providing longer cycle life instead of just the high energy density. Maybe.
What are your thoughts on this, Egert? How is Skeleton working with this?
Oh, well, we are not working directly on batteries, but one of the things that I have noticed when higher energy density was mentioned, people seem to be, or consumers seem to be very concerned about how quickly they can charge their batteries. And that drives up the need for high power batteries and also to have very large batteries. So you can charge your 100 kilometers in 5 minutes or whatever is the new record, right? So I was just thinking about that. That's why you saw my eyebrows move. Like, okay.
That's true. I could see you were reacting.
Yeah.
We are now talking about the coming 5 to 10 years. Where do you see that the trend is going? Ulla?
I see first that the role of recycled materials will be increased in the battery value chain. It is already nowadays increased. We can recycle materials. We should keep in mind that it is not always a question of recycling batteries back to batteries. For example, I have been involved in the issues where we recycle alkaline batteries to fertilizers. This is already a commercialized process here in Finland. We have also taken a metal refining sludge, which contains manganese, and we have recycled it to batteries. So that is one issue we should keep in mind. And it should also be possible that when we recycle the batteries, these elements will not be used. They can go to other areas of industry, not only to battery business. I see in the short term that lithium-ion battery technology will be on the market. I will say that it will have still some a 20 years future, even it has already developed and commercialized 30 years ago. I maybe see that these potential new battery technologies, which are studied a lot in Europe, they will not maybe be the issue. I think that we will go to capacitors, or we will go to energy, hydrogen technology, hydrogen energy technology. So, but anyhow, it's very important that we will look at a very open-mindedly all potential materials and technologies for energy storage, because as I mentioned, so many applications, and always we tailor-made the technology based on the application.
Do we have the skills here in the Nordic and Baltic region to be able to do this?
Yes, we have, but quite limited. And I think that is also the case in Europe. So for that purpose, for example, Oulu University has done this 15 years. We have a sustainable processes and materials degree program. Most of those are graduated in the field of battery. But I also see that this kind of adult education, what I will, for example, start to establish with the EIT Raw Materials together with some European colleagues, so that we take those already have some background in natural sciences engineers, and we give a short education to learn more. That would be very, very important. And one issue also, if we educate some young talents, like Katja, for example, we should keep in mind that if we promise something, that we educate them for the battery industry, we should also offer jobs for them. So, for example, currently there is no existing battery line in Finland. And then I think that it is unfair to say to students that that is the possible place for you to go and have a job, because that is not realistic yet.
How do you look at the job market?
Well, honestly saying, it's a bit intimidating. Like, one of the reasons is that like, let's say 2 years ago, I would have been also almost scared to find a job after graduating. Nowadays, like, you hear like news about new battery industry related companies coming to Finland. So like, it's easier to be also a bit more hopeful, but at the same time, it's also, you have to like after graduation, then it's probably like going to take some time to find a place that you want to work in. So yes, I don't know, but yeah.
What about creating your own startup?
Well, I think that depends on the person a lot. Like, if you are like have this kind of mindset that you like to challenge yourself and you have ideas, that's very important. So then that's an opportunity, like possibility. I myself, I'm not sure if I have the right mindset to do that. So it would be easier if there was a possibility to just find a place to job at.
Egert, you created your own startup.
No, I didn't, but well, some guys did.
What kind of support would you need?
Yeah. Just wanted to say something to the young colleague here, that you might be surprised that Skeleton is hiring battery people. And the reason being that I was talking about ultracapacitors getting about 4 times to 10 times the energy density of what is in the market today. And well, I'm sorry, but you cannot just do that with carbon. You have a theoretical limit there. And this means one has to sparkle a dust of battery chemistry in there, but still use the strengths of the ultracapacitor to get the heat out. And well, we have been hiring battery people to guide us on the way of the electrolytes and the additives, etc.
That's really nice to hear. We are already doing some matchmaking over here.
Yeah.
Although we're going to focus on that after this event. But creating a startup or scaling up a small startup, what kind of support do we need in this sector?
Christ, you are putting me on a spot
Yes.
here. What kind of support? EIT Raw Materials, very important.
Very nice answer.
Yeah, there are very different phases for companies, and they are quite clearly demarcated by the different amount of funds needed. I have been with Skeleton Technologies for 7 years, and well, the sums have elevated from a couple of million for a bigger research project to 51 million for a big project. So it has become very different. And we need all sorts of different support measures because, unfortunately or not, the private sector investors are looking to the public money to sort of vet a company that, oh yeah, we think it's worth the risk for the government. Would you put in the final third or half? Yeah, the process really works. And we have been trying to make the best use of it.
Piritta, how are you doing at the Finnish Minerals Group?
Yeah, we are putting the money in. So we are, at the moment, we are not developing our own technologies in battery. Of course, we have the cooperation projects, but we are investing in with joint ventures with technology partners who are already producing. And that could be also startups. So if we would have the possibility to have, for example, exciting research piloting startup that comes up with so innovative solution that we could then build the factory together. So these are, but I think we will need kind of platform for these kind of cooperations, and EIT would be excellent for that. But also to have, because otherwise we don't know who is doing and what. So this is not so visible. And I think the operators in the industry, they are so much focused on their own doing. So could be possible to include startups for all the phases, production, innovations, and all that.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we have to start to wrap this up because, and this is a discussion that I really hope will continue after this streaming and this event has ended out in the lobby. But I want to say a big and warm thank you for this, for your presentations and for giving your input to this. And then I will give the word to our next speaker, who is Tomi Lindroos. He's a research team leader at Materials and Manufacturing at VTT. And as you know, materials for magnets and motors are very high on the EU agenda, and something that we will focus on the coming hour. If you have any questions or comments and you would like to add, do not hesitate to just write it in the comment field below, or if you're sitting here in the audience, lovely to see so many people here, just raise your hand and we'll have a microphone put in front of you. Questions and comments, and now it's time for Tomi to talk more about additive manufacturing, and after him we will hear more from Jim Herschen-Schröder and Zhou Jie at Höganäs. Tomi, welcome.
Thank you for introducing me, and it's really pleasure to be here and see also people face to face, even though behind the masks. So, as mentioned, my topic today is the additive manufacturing and the magnetic materials, and why that topic? We already hear in the introduction of Kimo Tilikainen that electrification is a big trend at this moment, and of course there's a lot of hopes put to the electrification to mitigate the climate change. And we have also talked about a lot that what the electrification really means. It means, of course, the electric vehicles, electric mobility, but also the electrification of process industry, where the huge amount of electric energy is needed. If you think about the public discussion, it's typically, of course, it's much more easier to general public audience to discuss, for example, the electric mobility, electric cars, and a lot of discussion is connected to the batteries. The battery raw materials, as we have heard, the long lifetime of the batteries, recycling things, availability of the raw materials also. But less attention has paid on to what is the availability of or how we generate the electricity, how we transform electricity, for example, the motion needed in the electric mobiles. So that's the one area where also the similar things are coming up. So how about the supply of the materials, price of the raw materials, what kind of new technologies is needed to fully exploit the electrification by means of, for example, motors and generators. And okay, some problems, wrong button. Okay, so if you look at the realism, what is needed for the electrification, especially the green electrification. So how to mitigate those climate change and reduce the emissions. The realism is that we need also the green electricity, and to be enabled to talk, for example, the green mobility. And the wind energy is one of course one option, and the production price of the wind energy has decreased a lot during the past decade. So that enables to use the green electricity also from the economical point of view, not only to mitigating the emissions. And if you look at then the trend forecast, how much wind energy is forecasted to increase in coming 5 years period. It's almost doubled the production capacity of the wind energy. And if we then compare that amount to the forecasted increase of electrical mobility alone, not talking about any words about the process industry, it looks that the electric mobility will increase almost six times higher to this 5 years period. So it's quite obvious that there is a huge demand for the electricity, but also there is a really huge demand for the materials needed to energy production, especially in the wind energy, and also those materials needed to realize those motors and electric components in the electric vehicles. And there is one dilemma in this topic, because these two technologies, if you think about the wind energy and also the electric mobility, those are using the same raw materials. And if you think about the wind energy, there is an electric generator generating, of course, the translating movement to the electricity. And it's just opposite than to the motor in the electrical vehicles, which is transforming electricity to the movement. And both of those need exactly same technologies in different scale, of course, but the same raw materials are in both applications. So if you think about the growth rate of these technologies, that means a huge demand of the wide variety of raw materials. in basic steels or special materials, what is needed, for example, bearings or shaft of the motors, there's of course demands for niobium, vanadium to have a high strength materials. But of course, then we're going to the magnetic materials. There is a soft magnetic materials and hard magnetic materials, both in those both applications. And then we go to the most critical things. Critical raw materials connecting heavy rare earths like dysprosium, praseodymium, terbium, and also cobalt in some very special applications in the soft magnetic side. And as we've already heard in the introduction from GGK that when the growth rate of these technologies is so high, and it's not possible to have solutions from recycling for these technologies. So the demand for these materials is much more higher than the material what we can recycle. And if you think about the typical electrical machines in a big scale, the typical lifetime is one electrical machine could be 30 years. So there is nothing to recycle between the next coming 30 years. So, for example, in copper, that means that the huge amounts of coppers are tied up those motors, and similarly, of course, those magnetic materials. So what we can do, of course, we can start to develop novel materials substituting these heavy rare earths, for example, in magnets. Try to find substitutive materials for copper also, which and we all know that those are really difficult things and take really much time. And if you think about the typical cycle from lab to the real use, if you have now something on lab, it's probably 10 years that it's in real use on the industry. So all of those needed technologies should be already on lab if you like to have a substitution for those materials. Another possibility to tackle this problem is connected to how we can reduce the use of those materials. And we have vision that we are able to decrease weight of these electrical machines from about 30%. And without any decrease on key characteristic properties or lifetime of these components and motors, and reliability, of course, it's really crucial on these applications. And we all know that the manufacturing industry of electrical machines is really, let's say, they have really big, long history. They have done a lot of development activities, and if you like, for example, 1% more performance from the electrical machine, that means huge job. And typically, if we're talking about the conventional manufacturing and design methods, that is not possible, at least in the economical point of view. So we have to take a new approach to realize these electrical machines. And now we are going to why additive manufacturing issue. So additive manufacturing could change the design principles of these electrical machines and many other applications, of course, also. So the idea is that the additive manufacturing is offering the freedom of design. So there is no similar restrictions coming from the manufacturability of those components that has been conventionally have. For example, if you think about nowadays the electrical machines, those are more or less typically 2D structures manufactured from for example, laminated electrical steel structures. And by additive manufacturing, we can realize those structures in 3D, making also the optimization on 3D. But what is then needed? Of course, it's a big job going to a totally new area, and new skills are needed in many sectors. So at VTT, we have approached this topic so that we have combined of the know-how of several research teams. So we have experts on, of course, in the electrical machine designs and material people, manufacturing people, and then good facilities for the prototyping and demonstration of those solutions. So first thing, of course, we have to have people who can have out-of-box thinking and how to design by novel way those electrical machines. We have to develop novel optimization tools, like a topological optimization of the electrical machines, where we combine all of those key characteristics needed in electrical machines. So, for example, typically when we are talking about the topological optimization and additive manufacturing, that means the weight reduction and the strength of the components. But now when we are talking about the electrical machines, we have to combine those strength issues, of course, magnetic issues, electrical issues, thermal conductivity issues. So we have a multi-physical problem to solve. And we have to have material technology, manufacturing technology, which can answer those challenges which are coming from the design. And finally, have the possibility where to demonstrate those solutions on that level that the industrial people are interested to continue the research. And where we are now. So we realized, somebody asked that when you realized that the emergence of the batteries and electrical vehicles, at VTT we realized the need for new type of electrical machines and possibilities of additive manufacturing approximately 7 years ago. And since that we have developed that area. And now we are in a situation where we have let's say, the first generation materials ready for the upscaling to industrial use. So both in the soft magnetic material side and also the hard magnetic material side. And there's two EIT Raw Materials upscaling projects ongoing on that area. And you can find more information about those projects from those web pages mentioned there. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tommy. Tommy will be back in a few minutes for the panel discussion. And now we're again going to have one of our speakers with us from the other side of the world. This time we're going to the other side, to the States, where we have Jim Herschenschröder. And you are working at the Neo Magnequench, Neo Performance Materials, that's right. Are you with us, Jim? Okay, Jim is not with us yet. Then we will try to find out if Tso J is with us from Höganäs.
Yes, I would. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful to have you here. Where in the world are you sitting?
Yeah, I'm in southern of Sweden. So a small town is called Höganäs, but very close to Helsingborg, a little bigger.
That sounds like it's a very nice area in the world, I know.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we will switch the presentations so that you, Tso J, you will start this discussion. You will talk about soft magnetic composite for EV applications, that's right?
Yes, sure.
Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Should I show my presentation from Teams, or should you have the PPT in your side? Road.
You can show the presentation from your screen, please.
Okay, now it seems to work. So do you see my screen?
Yes, we see your screen.
So, thank you very much. And yes, I will talking some about soft magnetic materials for electric vehicle applications. And firstly, I would like some words about our company. So, company is called Höganäs. We're located in a small town in Höganäs, but we are the world leading company for the metal powders, especially for the iron-based powders. So we produce about 500,000 metric ton powders, and 70% of these powders is go to the vehicles. So it's automotive industries, because they need many components for each car is made of powder. So it's about from 5 to 20 kilogram component in a car is made of powders. And we have over 2,000 co-workers in 16 countries, and then we have turnover over 1 billion euro. And company like us, we supply most of powder for the automotive industry, but the electrification is on the way, and it's faster than people image. And you just roughly separate the red color is for internal combustion engine. Use diesel gasoline or natural gas, which are you familiar with the car, but electrification, different of electric vehicles is increased very rapidly. And up to 2030, in Europe and in China will be 50%. In USA, probably a little slow, depending on which state you are located, but for up to 2035, so almost no car, new produced car in Europe, and even in China will be internal combustion engine. Then this will be big challenge, not only for many material companies, and even for Hägglunds, we have a big challenge. But of course, we think there's big opportunities for the company. We supply powder because we are working iron powder, and iron is probably the best of the natural materials with magnetic performance, both for soft and this possibility for hard magnetic materials. So for our company, we are mainly focused for the soft magnetic applications. So if just looking for vehicles in electric vehicles, especially, or hybrid vehicles, so there's only two applications. This is still related to the fuels. So one is an ignition system, and another is a fuel injection systems. So if the completely electric vehicles, these two applications will disappear. But the others, they will image. The big one is the traction motor, so it's the drive system. And you need, for a car, at least one, probably you need several of the electro traction motors. And then you have a different small motor applications, like the water pump, air conditioning system, you need a cooling systems, so need a couple of small motors as well. And such for the motor applications, we normally say it's called stator or rotors. And then, of course, you have some of other applications, like we call the passive component. So for the battery package in the many electric vehicles, they have a DC-DC converters. DC-DC converter is function, you change the voltage. So you can increase the voltage for the running motor from the battery package. Probably you have from 200 voltage up to 600 voltage for running motor, more effective. Or you could decrease the voltage for many electronic or small motor applications, because many electronics in a car now is running 12 voltage based on the recent red acid batteries. And then, of course, for the battery package, you need charger. So even onboard charge, you need inductors in electric vehicles. So if we summarize of the how many soft magnetic materials you need electric vehicles, so it can be up to 10 kilograms. So in this case, it will be almost the same level as the internal combustion engine for the metal powders. And just simple some words about soft magnetic materials. So we based on a high pure iron powder, and we use some surface insulation, and very thinner. This is insulation is around 10 to 100 nanometers. And then you use mix with lubricant inside. This is almost the same as normal powder methodology. And then you compact the powder to the component, then heat up the component to a certain temperature for stress releasing. Then you could get a component with 3D shape of component. So or further also mention 3D motor topology. It will be very important for the applications, new applications. And here I just show a short video how can from powder to the component. So here you have the powder, and you have a compaction, and then you get and it's called it's a component. So you get the starter directory from powder to. In this case, you could use the material almost 100%. So it's, if compared to laminate sheets, you punch the laminate sheets, you wear different yield. For the large motor, you probably will have higher yield, but for the powder case, we almost can use 100% of powder. And then the component goes through the furnace for stress releasing, so you get a finished component. And then you could use testing direct the component in motor applications. And in this case, so from the powder to the motor component, and this is could have some quite many benefits. First, the motor could have very good power density, and this is very important for the automotive applications. And even in the automotive, we know the compact design volume, decrease the volume also is very important. And then, of course, because it's based on powder, now the traction motor and the many applications in the automotive, we need running high frequency. And then you get very good high torque. We know acceleration is very important for automotive. High torque is important. And then because you have a 3D design of the motor topology, so you could have very simple winding concept. And even relate to the permanent magnet, you could decrease amount of the permanent magnet because of a 3D design of topology of the motor. So this powder or this materials gives the possibility of the new possibility for design the motor. And if you use this case, you could decrease the copper winding, you could decrease of the permanent magnet. So in this case, you could decrease the total cost. And then, of course, sustainability is important. And if for the automotive, probably is not so long term, we're running maybe 10 years or 15 years, then we need a recycle of the materials. Because now almost all car manufacturing worldwide, they push the material supply, they would like carbon neutral. So carbon dioxide effect. So we need to recycle the materials. For if the motor made of SMC materials, so you could very easily separate of the iron materials and the copper. So it's very easy. But if you use a traditional laminate sheets, so it will be more difficult because the laminate is so strong. And the copper actually is very harmful for the steel industry. So people don't like the remelting of the iron with the copper. But for the material development, of course, we have the many challenges. And because we need to decrease the losses, because the loss is directly related to the efficiency of the motor. And the loss also will affect of the temperature rising in the applications. And we know there is like the permanent magnet, they don't like the high temperature it's running. And then we need high flux saturation because this is a key to get a high torque and with a low current. And then for the inductor applications, I think we have many challenges because for inductors, they have a very, very high frequency because up to 20-50 kilohertz. So from the motor, probably you run at 1 kilohertz or below. And then finally, I think how can we produce material with a sustainable way without the carbon dioxide? So it's not only for the recycling, or how can we make iron without carbon dioxide releasing? So it's called a green iron. Also, it's very important. So I think this is my last slide for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jay Cho. You will be with us on the line again in a few minutes when we will have a panel discussion regarding materials for magnets and motors. How about you, Jim? Are you with us now?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, wonderful to have you. How are things in the state today?
Oh, it's very nice. I wish the sun would come up. There's not enough coffee this early in the morning.
Oh, too bad. Hey, you are Jim Herschenröder. You are VP Engineering and Sales Manager at Neo Magnet Quench. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you very much. And you're going to talk about rare earth minerals and circular economy.
Yes, thank you so much. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and start. So I am, my name is Jim Herschenröder, and I work for Neo Materials. And I'm coming from Kentucky in the United States. So just a brief introduction to Neo Performance Materials. We're headquartered in Canada with 3 business units. I belong to the Magnet Quench business unit, which is makes rare earth magnetic materials, and we've been doing it for 35 years. Our link to the Baltic states is through a rare earth separation plant in Estonia, and that belongs to our chemicals and oxide business unit. So what's the rare earth magnet? There's different types, but most people these days are talking about the neodymium iron boron types of magnets. It's the strongest, it's the most cost effective. And there hasn't been a better material invented since its invention in 1984. These magnets are used everywhere. Tens of applications in automotive and with respect to CO2 reduction and carbon neutrality. Electric vehicle is the traction motor is an important component of that, and it uses 1 to 2 kilos worth of magnets in every car. But they're also used in renewable energy in terms of especially for offshore wind turbine. And then they're everywhere in modern life. So you see an MRI, vacuum sweeper, hair dryer, air conditioner, and also industrial automation, elevators, train brakes. So they're just everywhere. They're behind the scenes in all of the electric motors that you use. The demand for rare earth magnets is continuing to grow, and with electric vehicles and renewable energy leading the way, the demand for rare earth magnets are expected to double between now and 2030. So because of the increased demand now there is a lot of talk about how do you recycle the end of life so you can reuse the precious rare earth minerals that are in these magnets. And so what I'm showing here is a typical production supply chain. It starts with mining, which Neo doesn't do, but Neo does separate way through the recycling steps. And so if you have an end-of-life component and you want to put it into the circular economy, there's a couple of ways. You can go directly back to remanufacture, which is a little difficult, where you put the magnet or reuse the whole component, like the whole magnet rotor that Ijo showed in his presentation. There's a lot of effort to take the finished magnet and put it back into direct magnet production. And there's also, you can go farther back into the supply chain and go back and reclaim the rare earth elements themselves. So there's a lot of talk about reusing magnets, and it's a bit impractical. You can see that the shapes are are varied. They're definitely engineered components. They don't all have the same orientation. They don't have the same coatings. They don't have the same shapes. And it's very difficult to take the magnet out and use it somewhere else because the OEMs that buy the magnets, they have their own special requirements. It turns out to be much more practical to use the entire device. So for example, if you have a refrigerator, take out the whole compressor and put that uses a permanent magnet, and then take the compressor and put it in a new refrigerator if allowable. This trend is happening in data centers right now. So for example, instead of recycling the magnet in a hard disk drive, they now recycle and use the hard disk drive in total. So they'll upgrade the electronics and then reissue the whole drive without ever removing the magnet. Another problem with reusing magnet is technology refuses to stand still. So for example, electric vehicle can last 15 to 20 years, but if you're a good car company, you have 3 different design iterations in that time. And we heard the wind turbine example where they will, the turbines will last for 25 to 30 years. And so if you installed one in 2010, it was a 1 megawatt unit. And now when that turbine comes offline in 2035, there'll be 15 megawatt units being installed, and the generator and the magnets are now different in the new technology. An important part of the recycling equation that a few people talk about is opportunity cost, and which is related to it costs money to take the magnets out of the device, or it takes it takes money to recycle plastic plastic and water bottles as well. And so the opportunity cost for the recyclable material has to be less than the cost to recover it from the end of life situation. So on the left here, I'm showing a traction motor. On the right, I'm showing a hard disk drive, which are too much different extremes. And when you look at this, very different in terms of the magnet weight. The traction motor is almost a kilo. In this case, this is for an HEV application. The magnet in the hard disk drive is about 10 grams. So it's a big difference in the total weight. And the iron has no value, and so only the rare earth in the magnet has value, and the rare earth is typically about 1/3 of the overall magnet weight, so the actual weight gets reduced. And so now if you take the rare earth market value of the magnet in a traction motor, because it uses heavy rare earths for temperature resistance, the rare earth value is around $175 per kilo. But the rare earth value in a hard drive is only about 100, and that's at today's prices. A year ago, those numbers would have been half. So the market price of rare earths is important as well. It's typical in the recycle industry the opportunity cost is about half of the actual market value to cover all the collection, the processing necessary to take the material and turn it into new materials. So you can take this 50% value. And so for a traction motor, it costs you around $25. That's if you can get the magnets out for $25, you can recycle the magnets. But for a hard drive, you have to be able to get that magnet out of a hard drive, not only get it out, but collect it and separate it from the electronics, and you can spend 20 cents. And so this is why the hard disk drive recycling is very low, because there's very little value or opportunity to recover the investment to get the magnets back. But when these EV traction motors come offline in 10 years or so, their recycle potential is going to be high because of the value inside. Certainly, there's a competing interest between designers that use the magnets and recycling. And basically, it works out to as a tug of war. The motor designers are going for the highest reliability, the highest performance, the longest life, because that gives better value to their product. And so they make the motors very robust. They're hard to take apart. The magnets are coated against the environment so they don't have corrosion, and they're firmly glued in place so there's no change in motor performance over time. And all of these things that the motor designers do are bad for recycling. So the coating materials aren't compatible with the magnet materials generally because they reduce the magnetic properties. If the magnets are glued in, then they're much more harder to get out. And so you use up more of your opportunity cost. And finally, motors are designed to stay together for 15 years, and they're not designed to be taken apart easily. So this tug of war between the designers and the recyclers is an ongoing problem in magnet recycling. And so it's worth a little bit to look at the different types of magnetic structures and motors. Traction motors, much bigger than this picture, but it's called an internal permanent magnet type, and the magnets are actually embedded in an iron structure. The magnets can be mounted on the surface. The magnets can be glued into the motor housing. The magnet can be part of a component where plastic is injection molded integral to the magnet. The magnet can be held in place by magnetic clip or by steel clips, and sometimes the magnet is put into a steel or plastic overmolded structure for corrosion protection. So you have all these different ways that the motor designers use to protect the magnets and to make high performance designs, and a recycler has to take all of these into account. Some of them are more friendly. The clips and mechanical springs are much more friendly to get the magnets out. Things like overmolding and steel cans makes it very tough to access the magnets. So in terms of design recommendations, so if you're designing a motor and you want to make it available for magnet recycling, there's some things you can do. One is wherever possible, avoid individual magnet coatings, such as nickel, which is common in the magnet industry. Often a simple phosphate coating that's used in the steel industry is enough to get you through your assembly operation because the motor is going to be sealed for corrosion as well. You can use mechanical methods, clips and springs, and avoid gluing and overmolding, and that makes it easier to pull the magnets out. But when organic adhesives have to be used, then you should look ahead to the process that's going to be used to recycle, which is generally to burn them out. And then you want things that are non-toxic and don't produce harmful gases that contribute to global warming. And finally, you should design your final assembly motor so that it's easy for someone to open it up and take it apart. And I think my last slide is to make this work, you need collaboration in the supply chain between the designers and the magnet producers. And so I just talk about two situations where MagneQuench is involved in. First is in the automotive area. We work with a producer of magnets for traction motors. And we have a program with them where we recover their scrap magnets and we reuse those in our own production. We also work in the consumer electronics industry, so we're involved in a program with a major global electronics supplier, and they have programs to use only recycled magnets in their new devices, and we are supplying those magnetic materials to them. So these are two examples of current to be expanded to other companies, but now we have two large new industries, renewable wind energy, especially in Europe, and the e-mobility, part of the Green Deal. And as these new applications come online, the design principles to allow magnet recycling need to be designed in now.
Thank you very
So
much,
thank you
Jim.
for having me, and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Jim. Are there any questions to Jim or to Jay among the audience? Please raise your hand and we'll make sure you get a microphone. While I ask Patrick Friedrichs and Tommy Lindroos to re-enter the stage. Patrick is a senior scientist within the Mineral Economy Solutions and Mineral Intelligence here at the Geological Survey of Finland. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Tommy, we already met. And what about Cho Jay? Are you still with us? Yes, I can see you.
You're on mute.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
No,
Thanks, Jim.
yeah.
What about questions? Anyone in the audience that would like to have the word? If not, please write your comments and questions also if you're following this stream down below in the commentary field. Because now we started this event with focusing on the battery value chain, and now we're taking a little bit tighter grip of it all and focusing more on materials that we need for motors and magnets. But I will raise a question coming from a dummy within this field. We know why the magnets are important, for example, in really big wind power plants. But why are these small, to an eye, to a dummy, hidden parts so important when creating these magnets and for the motors? Could you, Patrick, start with?
May I draw you a picture?
Yes, please.
For example, rare earth elements, we have to see the whole sector as it is. We have a monopolist as China with around 90% of market share. So what we see now at the actual situation is that we see a lot of deposits coming upstream in Australia, which is a good sign because we want independent from these Chinese markets. The interesting part is what do we need for these small permanent magnets in the motors are neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, as well as a bit of terbium, I recognize here. And praseodymium and neodymium are typical light rare earth elements, and the other ones are heavy rare earth elements. So when we have a look where they come from, when we see China with a production rate of around 120,000 tons a year, so most of the light rare elements come from monazite, basnazite or xenotime deposits, which means they're high valued in praseodymium, neodymium, as well as cerium, lanthanum and samarium. And then we have a look at these southern ion absorption clay deposits in China, and there we will find the heavy rare earth elements, so dysprosium as well as terbium and lutetium. What we need for the future are more the heavy ones, because the light rare earth elements we could easily build up in our deposits like Finland and Sockley if it comes to a startup. This would be very cool to our economy. But when you see the heavy situation, you can go easily to Australia and see Northern Minerals now coming up with a pilot plant at the Bronze Range deposit. And they have a very special other deposit which is called John Galt. And in this Bronze Range deposit is also a heavy rare earth element, and we find a real high amount of dysprosium. And so these materials are very important to these motors we need for EVs. But when you see now, for example, in Germany, you have 8 to 9% EVs on the street. So imagine 90%, and you need an increase of production, and you need an increase of material. So where do it come from? We need more deposits outside China that are running. I know it's a hot topic, and it's a very interesting situation, and we will see and we will hope that in the next future that we will face this situation in a positive way.
Tommy, what is your take on this?
Yeah, I'm totally agree, and that is also rather much the political thing because China has so big deposits, they can also guide the global price of those raw materials. And we have a good example at the beginning of 2000 they decreased sharply all of raw material prices, and both Australia, China, they have to shut down their mines, and then they wait a couple of years, and then the prices came up. So that is pretty much connected to politics also. It's not only to the technical issues.
Yeah. And when you think about 2011, when they decreased the export quota, it was really collapsed.
Yeah.
So what about recycling then, as Jim talked about? Tommy?
Yeah, I think that recycling, of course, it's really important, but there is those challenges. So it's rather easy that if you have somewhere wind turbine generator where you have couple of hundred kilograms of those materials. It is not easy to take out there, but much more economical beneficial than to collecting those small pieces from, for example, earphones or hard disk or something like that. So that's probably something that are we able to use on those, let's say, the minor applications, some other type of materials, for example, a little bit smaller purity levels, utilizing those side streams, for example, on those. I don't know what are the possibilities really, but we have to think that do we always need the highest performance possible to all application, or do we have, let's say, different level of application where to use a different purification of also those raw materials?
Jim, you have been working a lot with recycling. What is your take on this?
Yeah, I think recycling mostly limited by the dispersion of magnets in the end markets. The magnets are relatively small, 20, 30 grams is not a bad average to look at. And I'll just give you an example. At the Magnequent plant, we produce 20 tons of materials per day. And if you look at that in terms of EV, that would be 20,000 motors you have to recycle to supply our plant, which is a lot. And even if you did that at 5% level, which is not a bad recycling ratio for an industrial plant, you're still talking 1,000 a day. But if you do that in electronic devices, in hard drives, it's a 10-gram magnets. In earbuds, it's less than a gram, so very small. But to get to that 5%, the equivalent of 1,000 EV traction motors, it's 100,000 disk drives you have to collect per day, and that's just to get a 5% recycle ratio. And so to get that many of these small devices together at one place and then process them, that is a major undertaking. And most of the rare earth magnets are used are more like hard drives than EV traction motors.
So Jay, at Höganäs, you're already using scrap to produce the soft material that you are producing magnets with. Could you tell us a little bit more about the innovation behind?
Yes, basically, as probably I have some comments, you say that why small amount of the permanent magnet, neodymium iron boron, so important for the applications, because there's quite many different permanent magnet. And the important for the main application, we need high efficiency, we need a very compact design, and so this permanent magnet was neodymium based. They are so strong magnets. So this is why it's so important for the applications. And in Höganäs, we actually use the SMC materials to make with the 3D design of topology. So it could be used as like a ferrite magnet. They are much weaker, so it works. But for the recycle, yes, Höganäs, for the soft magnet side, probably it's not so critical raw materials because we have the plant of iron, and even for the laminate, they have the silicone, so we have plant of such raw materials. But the most challenge for the material manufacturer, this is a carbon dioxide footprint. So they ask all companies would like to have the green or the carbon neutral. So in Häggnes, yes, we use the scrap as a raw material before we melting. But I think this is for Häggnes only. So it's good because we have very high yield to use as scrap as raw material. But actually, such kind of scrap, we have a very high demand, so high purity. So I think generally for Häggnes or generally for steel industry, I think is how can we make the green iron is a bigger challenge because mainly carbon dioxide is from the reduction of iron ore to the metallic iron. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, green iron. Sweden is really good at that at the moment, I know. But if we try to focus on the Baltic Sea area and the Nordic Sea here in the Nordics as well, what kind of innovations would we need? What kind of out-of-box thinking to be able to secure the materials that we need? I'm looking at you, Tommy.
Yeah, there's of course a lot of different approaches for that. But for example, if we think about these electrical motors, we have really strong industry in Finland and long traditions, and also in Sweden. So we have ABB and the big companies working here. So it depends rather much that how willing those are to change their thinking, or do we get the new, let's say, the startups developing totally new concepts. And we have seen on other technological areas that quite many times that let's say the little bit older companies, they have they let's say the ways of working. And they are not so willing to change the ideas and the products. But probably some, let's say, very innovative SMEs can start to product new type of motors and designs. And there are already some examples existing in Finland.
What are your thoughts, Patrick?
I think that the most or the best way to do is to plan a process chain, a complete process chain of the value chain that we have from mining until the end product, that we establish our own European Union market, because we have the chance to do that, especially when you're thinking not only about minerals and economy and all that stuff, because also of transport and logistics. We are nearby countries and all that stuff. And we should need a new strategy to that we establish all in our European countries, and that we take care that we have enough material for that. We can do a lot of things after that, and it's quite cool, and it's going in the right direction, and everybody's doing the best, but we need the materials. And this is the main point. I know it's a hot topic to talk about that, but we need the materials. And we have to, because we need to think about security of supply. This is a big issue for all Western industrial companies. Yeah, they talk a lot about costs and all that stuff. Yeah, but at the end, when they do not get the materials, the cost is so increasing for the products that it's really, really tough for them. So what we can do is just, I'm coming out of a very interesting project. It was called Green Mining and Separation. So, well, and a big company behind that. So it's also about marketing, about image. It's about the costs and the image that we get them. So, and this should be something which should go in that direction.
Are there potential for this industry to grow within the Nordic countries and the Baltic?
I think we should see the process chain as we have the materials, and also what we talk about a lot of recycling and all the other guys. And this is also could be a part, or should be a part. And but in the case of end production with cars and all that stuff, you need to see the situation that in the center of Europe you have all the big car companies, for example. So as well as in Sweden with Volvo. But yeah, in the case that we produced until the point of the permanent magnet, yeah, sure.
Jim, what are your thoughts on that? What can we do here in the Nordic and Baltic area?
Well, NEO has Silmet, which is the only operating rare earth separation plant in Europe, and so in that regard, we can be a regional resource to the materials operations that you hear about in Finland and Norway, and even Estonia has some phosphate-based materials that their government is interested in. So establishing that regional network is going to be important, but equally important is the end market is not the Baltics. The end market is going to be, the Western Europe predominantly. And so there needs to be cooperations with the other nation states, the Germanys and France and the Netherlands and so forth. So because that's where the major OEMs reside that worry about supply chain resiliency and sustainability in their products and then the costs of those products. So having that cooperation between the two regions, I think, is going to be very important to this overall success of bringing new rare earth material supply chains in.
What new innovations are needed and where should the investments go? I can see that Jim has some problem with his internet at the moment, so I'll give the question to Jay.
Yes, I think at this moment, if you need a motor with high efficiency, very compact design, and as I said before, it's a little difficult to avoid to use a neodymium iron bore magnet. But on the other side, I think we already have many projects we are running with the university, with a company, ABB, and some company in Finland. If we can change general concept, the motor design topology from 2D with laminate to the component with the 3D concept, then you have a more possibility. And we even have some cooperation with a Japanese company, and they are designing a permanent motor without a permanent magnet. So it's kind of a completely new concept. So from this point of view, I think we still have. Then of course, next thing should about if we could have the magnet system not so strong as a neodymium iron bore, but we have between like ferrite at this moment and could still get good enough efficiency. So such kind of project and investment. It could be in Nordic country where, in many cases, in Nordic country we are leading for our scientific research aspect.
Thank you very much, Jim. Would you like to add to this?
I would add that when people talk about innovation, they almost always talk about new products or different processes, but the additional innovations that need to be considered are the business models and the relationships between government and industry. So one of the reasons that China dominates the rare earth space is they were very innovative there. In those two areas. Certainly they put their effort in on developing the magnetic materials, but there is huge cooperations between Chinese government and the magnetic industries, and it's been that way for 30 years. And so it's not unreasonable to think that if it's a critical material for the European Union's goals, the Green Deal, carbon neutrality by 2050, that same kind of government support to the industry's key to making that happen is also going to be there. And of course, this is one of the roles of IRMA and EIT Raw Materials, as they're trying to facilitate that discussion between the industry, the European Commissions, and the knowledge community.
Thank you very much, Jim. A few last words before we have to end this discussion, our discussion that I hopefully also think will continue after this stream, because we're going to have a lot of matchmaking going on here afterwards. But Tommy, what are your thoughts about investments and where should they be put at the moment?
I think that one big big bottleneck is always some kind of upscaling between the industrial production and between the laboratory. So we will need the piloting facilities in, let's say, in correct scale level, so that we are able to produce the whole value chain from the material synthesis to component production, and have a real components to be tested in real applications. I think that's the one area where we need rather big investments.
Yes. Patrick, what are your thoughts?
I think we should also invest in 2 mines, or the few we have here in Europe, or somewhere else outside of China, so that we can, as I mentioned before, we need the materials. So we need also an investment. Interestingly, it would be to search for an alliance to do that. Then what I mentioned before, the process chain. So it's very important to invest also there, to get more innovation also from that side. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you to Jim and Jay for participating in this panel discussion. And now I will give the word to Olli Salmi. He is the Innovation Hub Director at the EIT Raw Materials Baltic Sea Innovation Hub. And he will focus and talk more on and about the opportunities to collaborate and to maybe create 1 or 2 innovations within this field.
I sure hope so. So hello again, everybody. And you know, if this is your first face-to-face conference in 1.5 years, and you were looking at 2.5 hours sitting down, you might have thought that was daunting, and I thought that was daunting. But now I feel good. I'd actually, I had missed this, and have no problem of doing this. Maybe not, over the next 1.5 years, but I think for a start, this was a very good event so far in terms of content and the presentation. So thanks already for everybody who contributed. A few notes on the topics that we discussed here today. So for the latest discussion here on rare earth elements, magnets and motors, so the innovation challenges are being collected, they are being described and detailed in this action plan from the European Raw Materials Alliance that will be published later today. So that's for sure a reference to look at in terms of thinking about future projects, whether they are innovation projects or investment cases. The second obvious part, of course, is where to go from here, where to take these thoughts, and one solution from EIT Raw Materials point of view is, of course, our Kava calls. And many of you have been communicated, you've been around there, that we just communicated the results of the latest, the Kava 8 call last week, with a lot of new projects starting up, and also to reflect back to the battery discussion and energy storage discussion, that SMEs and startups are actually already getting involved. So about half of the upscaling projects that we are proposing to be funded by the EIT are actually being coordinated or commercialized by startups and SMEs. So we see a variety of industrial actors coming into the field, which is very good news, I think, for everybody. I'm going to be brief here with discussing the Kava Call 9. A lot of this information will be available and is already available over the internet. But the main thing is that we continue to support innovation, acceleration, innovation, and education. And an important part here is, of course, the regional aspect, what we call the RIS. I have Tina Benda here to join me in a minute, our RIS manager, to describe a little bit what we're looking for in there. But basically saying that the next call, Kava Call 9, compared to the previous call, is continuing on the same thematics and same topics. So we are looking at PhD, summer schools / winter schools. We will continue to look at lifelong learning projects, and we will continue to look at upscaling projects and, of course, risk capacity building. The topics on these upscaling projects in particular are remaining rather the same as we had in Kava 8, with the lighthouses being on top of there. So we have a 2-stage approach that we've had before. We continue to do that with the deadline for the first stage then 19th of November. And should you get to the second stage, then in the spring you have your deadline for your final proposal, and then If all goes well, you'll be able to start your project in the summer of 2022. Just going a bit faster ahead here. So as mentioned, the topics for upscaling follow closely our 3 lighthouses. So we have for the sustainable discovery and supply, especially focusing on exploration and quantifying methods in exploration. We have a focus also on social license to operate. They're involved as well as, of course, going towards the process design in actually minerals processing. For the PhD part, of course, we are looking at criticality, circularity management, circular economy management in a specific topic, as well as, of course, the Green Deal. How do we make really the EU policy through the Green Deal work for the sector? For the second part here, the lighthouse, is the sustainable materials for future mobility. That's a very, very central theme and a very central lighthouse to this event here today. And we are looking at the automotive industry. We are looking at cathode materials. We are looking at magnetic materials, especially as regards to design, how to get to the raw materials and how to actually then retrieve even secondary materials. Finally, topics related to circular societies, our third lighthouse here. So here, design for circularity is a central theme, and we continue to look at both end-of-life recyclables, but as well the process residues, so industrial symbiosis and utilization of process residues, because that is also one thing that reminded me about this in ramping up battery production, ramping up chemical production, ramping up magnets production. You always get a lot of off-spec material, and to date, until we have enough end-of-life materials to be recycled, this off-spec is probably going to be the biggest candidate for your recycling project. So for sure, involved in this call as well. Where to connect? So of course, beyond today, where to connect. So the next opportunity for you to build your projects, build your consortia, will be in 2 weeks. It's the expert forum. All of these 3 lighthouses will be there. You will have ample opportunities to network, to broker, to create your consortia. It's fully online. And in case you have not yet registered, please go do so and have your idea there and discuss it. I promise to be brief, and I'm brief. I'll still give the floor to Tiina Benda here, our EIT Raw Materials Risk Manager, to talk about the risk capacity building part.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Olli. Hello, greetings to everyone. Happy to be here today. So my name is Tiina Benda, and I am the Regional Innovation Scheme Manager of EIT Raw Materials. And today I would like to present to you the opportunities within the Regional Innovation Scheme, or RIS, as we shortly call it for you, the Baltic Sea stakeholders. So I would like to start with shortly presenting, what the Regional Innovation Scheme, or RIS, actually is and where it originates from. In Europe, there are considerable disparities or differences in innovation and research performance of these different countries, and probably most notable between the North and the South and the East and the West countries. And here on the graph, you can also see the Horizon 2020 funding received per capita for the EU member states, at least up to the mid-2018. And I think it's quite clear which countries have received the most from the program and which were not so good in receiving the budget for their innovation and research activities from the program. So, in order to help these countries that are not as innovative as some others, or as the European innovation average is, the EIT started in 2014 a special scheme. It's called the Regional Innovation Scheme, or RIS, and it is there to help advance the less innovative countries of Europe in terms of innovation performance. So here on the map, in the green colors, you can see which are the Regional Innovation Scheme, or RIS eligible countries. So from the Baltic Sea, CLC, these are Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Now, Olli has shortly presented to you the education and upscaling Kava call. And here I would just like to mention that if an education proposal or project or an upscaling proposal or project is focused mostly on the RIS region, and the activities are performed mostly in the regional innovation scheme or RIS region or country, it is called a RIS education or RIS upscaling project. But today I would like to especially focus on the special KAVA category, which is called the RIS capacity building KAVA. So the regional innovation scheme or RIS capacity building KAVA call it's different from the upscaling and education KAVA calls because it has favorable criteria that were set by the EIT for easier integration of RIS partners and RIS activities into the KICS activities. So who is it set for? It is for entities that are coming from RIS eligible countries, so the ones who are colored in green. It is also meant for activities that are focusing on RIS, and I would just like to stress that non-RIS partners or non-partners that are not RIS eligible can also participate in the RIS capacity building KAVA proposals. So for who is the call made for? Who should apply? I would say that if you are a RIS partner or non-partner coming from RIS and you have a raw materials related challenge that could be tackled through a project, it's for you. If in your network you have a partner from RIS who has a raw materials challenge, and the capacity building projects could help them solve this challenge, they should apply. But also for the non-RIS partners, the technology and service providers that would bring in the solution to solve the challenge in RIS region, this is also a great opportunity for you to open a new market for your solutions and technologies in the RIS region. And before I conclude, what are these favorable criteria in the RIS capacity building that I was mentioning earlier? So there is no mandatory co-funding in this KAVA category, and there is no mandatory financial sustainability mechanism. Just to shortly conclude, to hopefully spark some project ideas from your side, I would say that all the topics that were presented today are very much relevant for the proposals in the RIS capacity building KAVA call. Here on the slide, you can see some examples of what the RIS capacity building activities can be proposed. But I would just like to conclude that the RIS capacity building KAVA call aims at detecting a raw materials risk challenge, and through the consortium providing a solution to solve this challenge. And of course, for the solution provider, it can open a new market, a market in the RIS country or the RIS region for your business. So if you have an idea to discuss, I'll be happy to discuss it today with you. Just write an email to myself or the CLC and we can discuss the ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that's it for today, for this year of the Innovation Hub Baltic Sea Stakeholder Day. Thank you for following. This stream will be saved at the EIT Raw Materials YouTube channel. If you have any questions or things you would like to discuss, do not hesitate to reach out to us, to Olli Salmi here at the Baltic Sea Innovation Hub, and of course to Bernd and Emmo if you are here on spot at the GTK. And do follow arma.eu and EIT RawMaterials.eu because there are going to be a lot of news posted the coming months. And remember the launch in a few hours. Thank you.